Disclaimer. I do not play this class. I hate the Druid. I think anyone who does play it is either a furry or a hippie. This guide was written by Wappn8r, whose name sounds like a racist Terminator, but that's actually just how his last name sounds. So I'll be providing some commentary and going over his guide and splicing in his explanations along the way. Hope you guys enjoy. This is the Wind Druid. Let's get this out of the way right off the bat. The Druid sucked in LOD. The Druid was only a half-finished character at release. David Brevik has said so, and he and his team were whisked away onto other projects soon afterwards, without getting a chance to fix the Druid's problems. We know that focusing on summons was not a viable archetype. The shape-shifting tree mainly had just meme builds, and the cooldowns hampered the Fire Druid, as well as the physical damage portion of it just being too small. So we all landed on Wind, and that's what everyone played. And if you played it for more than 3 seconds, you are now deaf from the hurricanes buffeting your ears, and everyone knows tornadoes never go in the direction you want them to go. This made Enigma a must because telestomping works, which was made way easier by an overpowered Cyclone armor and Oak Sage, of course, but it made it tough to get started with. That said, I somehow fell in love with this idiot all the same, and whenever I've come back to D2 over the 2 decades since, it's one of the tunes I always end up playing. In Season 1 of PD2, I was excited to see how the character played, especially with Gust now in the arsenal, but come mapping it wasn't quite keeping up with the damage, though I admittedly didn't get to full GG. So I ended up flopping to the new summon build, which was better, but invigorated with the Twister buffs this season, I excitedly set off into Sanctuary once again, with the old furry, see, everyone's a furry, in tow, hoping to knock down as many monsters as Hurricane Ida did telephone poles. Yeah, that sounds like a joke someone with a perfect math SAT would write. Wappus, spot on. But what did I find? It's actually pretty decent. Now, if you read Lawsuit's guide on how to play the season, the best guide ever written, by the way, your starting character should be a reasonable magic finder, and this was it for me. It can move pretty well, it's relatively safe for killing monsters, especially once you get a well-geared merc. Gear is not that expensive to get it to a spot where you're clearing stuff efficiently, though certainly not anywhere near the fastest character in the game. As such, I found it a great starter this season, and I am glad I could take him for a spin another time. Let's dive in. Act 1, leveling. Wind still sucks until Twister, and even then it's a pain until you get some more levels. Don't even try it, just go Fire. Put points into Firestorm until you can do Fissure points and build a Leaf Staff. Fissure an area and keep moving. This'll get you through Act 3 Nightmare no problem. The only 2 enemies you can't kill are Grand Vizier and Chaos, which is easy enough with Molten Boulder, and Kalenzo and Throne, which is easy enough with Volcano. Or you can just find a friend. Lawsuit told you to find a friend like 3 weeks ago. Have you found one yet? No, they have not, Wappus. I guarantee they haven't. Act 4 Nightmare has fire immunes, so at that point you can respec into Wind. If you're walking it solo, you should be into the high 40s somewhere so you can max out Twister and Hurricane. Be sure to have a point in Gust too, that's your movement skill by the way, and don't go too crazy teleporting because it is on a long cooldown, 6.3 seconds at level 1. It also prevents you from using Cyclone armor until it's off cooldown, so be careful with that too. Though Cyclone armor is not worth that much until you start getting plus to skills anyway. As you move into Hell, you actually have reasonable damage even solo self-found. Spirit Sword and Stealth will get you to the 46 faster cast rate breakpoint unless you've rolled a 25 Spirit, of course. But if you do get a 28 plus Spirit and Mage Fists or Trangs or a pair of FCR rings, you will get to that 68. Build a Rhyme for the cheap Cannot Be Frozen. Swap the Stealth for Spirit Shroud, Magi, Atmas, Q-Hagans once you find one. Seriously though, there's 4 very respectable, exceptional unique armors for casters. Any of these will do. Physical immunes are normally too much of a pain, just ignore them. Act 1 Ghosts you can kill by standing near them with a Hurricane for a few ticks, but anything later and you might be tempted to boot up Arctic Blast, which will which will back bang your head against the monitor. We're doing great editing here with this that we've gone through. The Arctic Blast will make you bang your head against the monitor, hoping it will increase the damage. Also, ghosts don't really do anything. Once you have physical immune moon lords bearing down on your ass, you're welcome to wait for the Arctic Blast damage to work, but it is your funeral. Act 2, through Hell, Skills, and How to Play. Well, skills are honestly easy. There's one choice to make. First, max the 4 elemental skills that matter. That's Twister, Hurricane, Tornado, and Arctic Blast. Then your choice of Oak Sage or Gust cooldown. Gust cooldown is appealing until you start getting more skills from gear where it's less of an issue. With plus 19 to Elemental, which is not too tough after skillers, you're at 2.5 seconds each for your teleport. So maybe put a few points in to get it closer to 1 second, and then the rest into Oak Sage. You can also get a few Meat Shield, Wolves, and Bears with 1 point each, but that's up to you. Try it, I'm not here to hold your hand. With Wolves, Bears, and only 1 point in Gust, you'll reach max Oak Sage by level 93. So how do you play? Well, you enter an area with your pre-buffs, Oak Sage, Pet, Cyclone Armor, Hurricane. Obviously recast all those as soon as possible when any of them go down in that order. Use Twister, though, as your main damage skill. You can only cast Twister in the 8 cardinal and secondary directions, and you don't have full control on its direction. Seriously, why do you play this class? So practice a little, and figure out the cones where the damage is dealt. Also, the range is further than you think, a little after Twisters visually fade. So you can't even rely on your eyes to play the Druid. This class sucks. It's key to figure out how to stay as far away from dangerous enemies like archers and harpies as possible, while still killing them, obviously. Start cautious with your gust casts. Teleport short of enemies, not into them. And as you get better gear and shorter gust cooldowns, you can move more aggressive with them. But remember, your Twisters don't cast all around you, so it's good to keep your enemies to one side instead of being inside of them. Yes, Hurricane damage is all around you, but it's maybe 20% of your damage. On bosses, you can use Tornado, and when you look at the damage, it seems like they do about the same on paper, maybe even a little more on Twisters, even when you hit high levels. But Tornadoes move slow. They actually hit the bosses 2 to 3 times each, making them deal way more per count. If you can get them to hit, that is. Cue to Wappn8r.
Alright, and one last thing I wanted to talk about here was tornadoes and kind of how they work. Let's say this torch right here is my target. Let's say it's Bale standing there. When I keep casting with my cursor at the same spot, look, these tornadoes are consistently going on the same path and they're missing. But if I move my cursor closer to myself, I suddenly end up with a different path. These paths are actually hitting it. If I move it further, it's an even yet different path. So if you find yourself stuck, consistently missing like this, here I'm back to that same path, try moving your cursor further away or closer, and you'll end up with different paths, even along the same axis. I'm gonna go over here and try again. And this one's actually hitting, but if I move closer, suddenly they're diverting way south. So keep that in mind as a little tip and trick as far as trying to make sure that this works.
If you're strong enough, Telestomp and your Tornado will hit. If you need to hang back a bit, try casting a few, and if they're nowhere close, move your character or cursor. Do not stay the same distance from the boss by just rotating around it, or they'll probably follow the same relative path and miss again. You need to move in and out. Or move your cursor closer to or further from your character, instead of always focusing on the monster, because it also changes the path. Once you find a path that works, don't move your cursor if you can help it. For fuck's sake, this class sounds worse and worse as I read your guide. Alright, so Act 3. Magic Find and ideal cheap gearing to start mapping. This is actually where I saw his Druid kind of take off, guys. So, because you're a relatively safe character staying at some range, Oak Sage and Cyclone Armor, you can have good MF on your second weapon swap. I started with a Gold Dagger, and I found a Rhyme Shield. Now it's a 3-ist Alibaba and a 3-ist Milbrega Shield, which has 50 base MF. That's 305 Magic Find on just those two. I have seen Wappn8r run these firsthand. The Druid really doesn't slow down with those equipped. It's quite stupid. For gear, first things first, you're a caster, so obviously fill out your inventory with elemental skillers. At the start of the season, they often went for ist each. Now they go for about num. Other than that, one thing I love about the Wind Druid is there is no necessary item. You can take the scraps, buy the stuff at the thrift shop, and customize as you please. To paraphrase Macklemore out of context, I found an early whiz spike, I used an early whiz spike, I crafted sweet belts, and then I went on the trade site and bought an Arax. It's not that catchy, but it works, like that dumbass song. Get the 99, the FCR breakpoint, that is, not level 99. I'd love to, but I have a job. Because of this, Alder set is definitely better for summoners who don't need the FCR as much, as it only gives 30% across 4 pieces. Though Helm and Boot aren't prime FCR slots, Weapon and Armor are, but it can work. I first got there with Whiz Spike, Lidless, Mage Fists, and a crafted FCR belt, which can be very good. Eventually, got a Q Hagen's, built the Hodo, got way more damage than the Whiz Spike, and whatever I had at armor. Wanting faster hit recovery, and to figure out how to shove more F in there, I fought the Spirit for Atmas, freeing up gloves for Chance Guards. You guys see how this goes. When trying to maintain a breakpoint, you rarely look at one replacement at a time. You want to figure out a combined effort and move more towards the goals of your character while keeping that breakpoint. So Act 4, your Mercenary. Amp damage. Get it yesterday. Your Twisters do physical damage. Amp damage reduces enemy physical resistance. Got it? Good. Though, since I'm already being verbose, I might as well elaborate. Oh god. I was fortunate enough to find an ethereal Reaper's Toll pretty early, but Lacerator, Gavel of Pain, Vile Husk, all those work. For an Act 5 Mercenary, that can work too. Vile Husk goes on the Act 5 Mercenary. Again, good editing we're doing here. Witch Wild is what you want to get for the Act 1 Mercenary. All those are the amp casting uniques. That said, Might isn't really useful for you, and I really do like someone to hold monsters there while I throw out Twisters, so you might end up having to deal with the Touched in the Head Town Guard from Act 2. Don't tell Asab that, he is doing a great job. But Reaper's Toll level 16 amp damage only reduces physical resistance by 25%. Is 25% damage worth that much? Yes. It reduces enemy physical resistance by 25%. That monster with 50% base physical res, it now has 25. Unlike LOL Suit, I did get a math degree. You know what? Fuck you, man. I was astrophysics for a semester with a C average, okay? So I can tell you that you're now doing 50% more damage instead of doing 50% of your listed damage. You're now doing 75%. 75 divided by 50 equals 1.5. That means 50% more. So that 25% amp you're getting, it's 50% more damage for you. Those Desert Wings and Bastion's Keep with 95% physical res, well, they now have 70. Well, 30% divided by 5%, that's 6 times as much damage. And physical immunes, that is infinitely more. That's calculus, I think. Until I got amp damage every time I ran into a physical immune, Infector of Souls, things like that, I wanted to rip my eyeballs out. Now I just grab a drink and wait until Asab swings a few times, and I'm on to Diablo. That's the important thing out of the way. Now to the easy part everyone knows. Get your Merc to max res, then do the PDR and Life Leech, but starting with that double-digit Life Leech on Reaper's Toll is pretty epic. String, Vamp Gaze, Shap Stop, whatever, you know the deal. Gave mine a Fort when I found the low. Make sure you get that Canopy frozen because you need him to swing fast to proc those amp damages, right? So Act 5, what's next? Well, that's up to you really. What do you want to do? I found some gear to max out resistances so our group could do Ubers, even though I have to solo them down when you die, Wappn8r. For a time, I wanted to figure out how to build towards that 163 FCR breakpoint, but decided against it. You could do it. A real Arax and a few rings get you a lot of the way there. You probably have to get a 2-skill 20 FCR helm and an Ami to finish the job, but it can be done. I just wanted to spend my hard-earned high runes on other shiny new characters because, as I said, I've been hanging out with this guy for 20 years now, and we do not need to see each other every other day. Even if we don't talk that often, I still hit the Druid up when I'm back in town. We meet up for a drink, and it's just like nothing changed. And I hope it never does. See you guys. Oh, and here's Wappus with some more mappiness.